Welcome to the Crush the Journey podcast, episode 27. Today's episode of Crush the Journey podcast is brought to you by Evolution Live, a 3-day business education and networking event, October 18th through the 21st in sunny Orlando, Florida. Join business coach Erin Morgan and 125 passionate female entrepreneurs to receive training in sales, marketing, mindset, and so much more. Evolution Live is for you if you're looking to learn effective strategies and you want to walk away with a doable action plan. Featuring guest speakers, dedicated time to network, and a beautiful locale to refresh, Evolution Live is an event that will transform your business. Get your ticket for Evolution Live 2018 today at erinmorgan.com/evolution-live. Okay, we are recording, and here we go. Welcome back to the Crush the Journey podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Hottle. In this episode, we will be tackling the all-important question every entrepreneur, including myself, struggles with, and that is, how on earth can I get everything I need accomplished? We may start our days with the best of intentions and even create a checklist, which I love to do, of all we want to accomplish and relishing the moments of being able to check items off our list. The most satisfying thing. But if you're anything like me, I'm lucky if I get to even check one thing off that list. And that's usually because I insist that only I can do it or only I know how to do it. So that by the end of the day, we may be exhausted from our busyness, but we look back and realize we didn't appear to have done what we set out to do. Does that sound familiar? So what's the solution? Well, my guest today has developed a paint-by-number system for delegating effectively and improving our productivity. I am very happy to have on our show today Lisa Crilley Mallis. Lisa works with focused, successful business owners who are overcommitted and want to achieve more without giving up their nights and weekends. That would be such a dream. For over 15 years, Lisa has provided customized, practical solutions to everyday capacity building challenges, allowing her clients to accomplish more in less time while still enjoying their lives. She is the current National Association of Women Business Owners, Cleveland president, and a member of the Red Key Network and International Coach Federation. Lisa lives in Chagrin Falls, Ohio, with her husband, Lou, and his dog, Newton. She loves chocolate, the beach, and country music. Please join me in welcoming Lisa to our show.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to be here.
I love having you here. And we're fellow Navo sisters, which is awesome too.
Yes, absolutely. It's amazing the connections you make in Navo.
It really is. I mean, I can't believe, I have been a member just probably a year and a half now. And I think it's just everyone's so warm and friendly and willing to either take you under their wing or talk with you or share with you. I mean, it's amazing, the camaraderie that you can make in Navo. So little plug for Navo there.
Yay!
So let's kind of just dive in here. And I know that you have said one of the biggest challenges that most solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, small business owners have is that they spend so much time working in their business, but that they don't really have time left to work on their business. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Absolutely. I think that many solopreneurs, entrepreneurs start their business because they're really good in a particular skill. So let's say that they're a great baker. They start a bakery. Or in my case, I enjoyed coaching, so I started a coaching business. Well, you're in the business doing all the work. You're baking the cakes, you're coaching your clients, and you continue to do all the work as it expands out from your skill set. So you're doing the marketing, and then you're doing the books, and then the list just keeps going on and on and on. And you're not taking that step back to think about, how do I make my business stronger? How can I make my business more profitable? How can I lessen the amount of time that I'm spending in my business so that I'm leveraging better? Instead, what's happening is you're just working, and you're mired in all the details. Instead of being a business owner, you're a business owner and an employee. And you're spending way more time on the employee side than the owner side.
And that's you really hit it on the head. I don't doubt that most of these listeners, or even probably all of them, including myself, experience that, either have or are currently experiencing that. Because it's when you start your business, I mean, who else is going to do it all, right? You have to be able to do it. And I love it because it echoes one of our favorite books is the E-Myth. And what you described by Michael Gerber, and what you described is kind of the story he talks about in there, about the woman who owns the pie shop, and she did it because she makes wonderful pies, but she was just so exhausted because she was too busy doing everything else too.
Right.
So what's there's only so much, right? There's only so much time in a day that anybody can, and only so much anybody can do. So what's the solution here? What's the ideal here that everyone would be looking to achieve then in working with some, like what you've worked with?
Well, I think it comes back to a little bit of what you were saying, at the beginning, is you have your checklist and you look at your checklist and you think, oh, I'm the only one that can do everything on this list. And then you dive right in doing everything instead of coming back and asking yourself, okay, what's my zone of genius? What are the things that only I can do? Everyone is gifted with a skill set that is unique to them. And when you can live most of your life sitting in your skill set, then you are able to be working on your business more than in your business. You're doing the things that only you can do. And I think I read Zone of Genius somewhere. And I wish I could credit whomever came up with that phrase, but that's what it is what's your zone of genius? And it's not necessarily what is it that you're good at. It's what are you good at and have a passion for. It's both of those things. Okay.
So how does someone identify their zone of genius, especially someone maybe if they've been running their business for 2 or 3 years and they've just gotten so used to. And I think that maybe that's something too where people, and you can speak to this too, is maybe one of the common mistake could be that we just get so comfortable in our own chaos, right? It's easier to live in that chaos because we're used to it, even though it's driving us crazy, but it's what we're used to. So
exactly.
How do you break out of that? Clearly you're tired, right? I can experience this. I've experienced this too. I'm tired. I'm not getting enough done, but if I feel like I don't have enough time. So how do you make the time to make the time, I guess?
Right? I know. Right? And you're like, oh my gosh, I don't have enough time now. How do I make the time to, right? How do I make the time to think? I think is a piece of it. So back to the first question you asked me, how can you identify your zone of genius? I think it differs for everyone. In my case, it was identified for me, meaning I was in transition from working in education to starting my own business. And I was trying to figure out what that was going to look like. And over the course of about 6 months, I had a number of people coming to ask me to do similar things to help them with similar situations. Until all of a sudden I realized, oh my gosh, this is a skill set. Like I can monetize this. I had no idea helping people, as you said, you get comfortable in the chaos, helping people out of that chaos, people will pay you for that. So I think a piece of it is when you identify your own, it's what comes easiest to you that you can see other people struggling with. Like I just assumed everyone was good in time management because I was. And then all of a sudden people are like, oh my gosh, can you help me? I can remember my first paying client, God bless her. She ran a business out of her home. She had 3 assistants that would come in once or twice a week. And she would never knew what to have them do. And so instead, she would make them lunch. They would sit and have lunch. And then they would leave. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a really expensive lunch. You cooked it, you served it, they ate it, and you paid them all. Like, I'm like, can I work for you? I want to work for you. And it wasn't that she didn't have the work for them. It was that she was exactly what you just said. She didn't have the time to think. And so they came and she didn't know what to have them do. Or if she did have them do stuff, they couldn't work independently of her. And so she spent the whole time helping them do the work she needed them to do. So anyway, so all of a sudden I was like, look at this. This is a job. I can totally do this. So I think that's one of the things when you look at how can you identify your zone of genius is just look at what comes so easy for you that you would almost do it for free. And I am not advocating doing it for free, but like is that enjoyable for you? So that's the first answer to your question.
Okay.
Or the answer to your first question, sorry. The answer to your second question about how do you make the time to make the time, it really is just taking it. And I know it seems so counterproductive to think I'm so far behind in everything I have to do. I'm now going to take off, quote unquote, 2 hours to think. But there's a quote out there, something about, planning for an hour saves 100 hours, or I don't know what the quote is exactly. But the point is, when you can plan, stop and plan, you save time all along the way. And so this morning, actually, my best thinking time is in the morning. And this morning when I got up, I am bringing on a second VA. And I needed to really think through, what was she going to do? What's my current VA going to do? But outside of that, I had to identify all the tasks that are going on right now and determine whether or not they're worth doing. So instead of being comfortable in my chaos, here's a list of 50 things my VA does. It's like, well, wait a minute, why are we doing this? And I can't do that in 10, 15-minute bursts of time throughout the day. Like, I have to sit there uninterrupted. And this morning was like about 90 minutes. But now I have a plan. I have a plan for both of them. I have a plan to onboard the other one. And I know that at this moment in my business, the tasks I'm going to have each of them do are there for a reason, which means I eliminated about 30% what was on the list.
Well, I think you identified something that's interesting, is that you said that the early morning is your best time to think. And I think identifying a particular time of day, it sounds like, is kind of the first step in taking that time. I mean, if you're trying to, do something when, like, I've got 3 kids, and the idea of them coming home from school and I'm picking that time to try and sit and have a dedicated time to myself is a little crazy. So I would never get anything done. So it sounds like it's really important in identifying your zone of genius is when is, and finding that time to think, is identifying maybe when are your most productive times. Does that sound?
Yep, absolutely. So biological prime time is what, I just lost the name, the Productivity Project by Chris Bailey. He identifies that as biological prime time, your time of day in which you are best able to do those thinking tasks. And then you can take that even further to look at when's your energy the highest, when are there outside distractions. And when you can start to look at your calendar and your tasks and match those up, so you're in a much better place to get things done, get them done well, get them done easier, and release the guilt. I had a client a couple years ago who had one kid in school, one kid home, and she felt guilty that she was trying to work when he was home. He was like, I don't know, like every other day kindergarten or something. And I said, well, there's things that you can do when he's with you that don't take away your time, because they would sit and watch a movie in the afternoon. And I said, well, do you need to be fully engaged with him to watch the movie? And she's like, well, no, I just need to be in the room with him. He just wants me in the room. Mm-hmm. And I said, okay, well, in that case, what are the tasks that you can do that you can be in the room with him that doesn't require 100% focus on your part, but so you're moving forward on your goals, but yet you're still doing what you need to do with him? I said, because it's not making phone calls to clients, but there are other things that you could be doing. And for her, that was a huge switch for her. because she wasn't identifying what tasks could happen without him when he wasn't home and what tasks could happen when he was home. And they were different. And so that released the guilt, because she still obviously had time where she spent with him without doing anything else other than him. But like she said, I don't need to sit there and stare at him all day long when he's home.
Yeah.
So how do you work around that? What can you do? So there's a lot of factors that go into how do you choose what you're doing and when. And a piece of that's your biological prime time. A piece of that is, do you have kids at home? Or like right now, my husband he goes back to school tomorrow. Yay. But, you have distractions.
Okay. So it sounds like in taking the steps to improve your productivity is, not only identifying that zone of genius, but also taking a realistic look at your day or your schedule. And is it trying to rearrange the items on your list, like the to-do list, to correspond to way that you're kind of working it around your life? Or is it the other way around? What tends to kind of be that kind of sweet spot?
I think it will. So this is not a cop-out, I promise, Jennifer, and all those of you who are listening. But the answer is, it depends.
I get that.
And a lot of the work that I do is customized per person.
Okay.
Because everyone's different. I know when I work best. When you work best. And so the way that you approach it is going to differ by person. So the way that tends to work best for me and for many of my clients is to look at my task list, look at my calendar, and take the tasks and slide them into the calendar in the right places. Other people do it the complete other way. They look at their calendar and say, okay, what do I want to do here? And what do I want to do here? And then fit it in that way. It depends on how your brain best works. I just started we're 3 weeks in, so it's still a work in progress, but I restructured my week to where Mondays is all marketing. So it's shooting videos, it's writing e-blasts, it's anything that falls into the marketing bucket. Fridays is content development as product related. So not marketing, but actual, clients need this, or I need to create a presentation for this or whatever. And then the middle of the week is people stuff. It's podcasts like this, it's coaching clients, it's networking meetings. And the thought was, get my brain in one place on Monday. Marketing is not an easy skill set for me. So I need to get myself into it. It takes a little while, and then product development, I enjoy doing, but tend to rush it. So if I give myself a whole day on a Friday, now I have that place. And then in the middle, I can just go appointment to appointment to appointment, knowing that I don't have any hard thinking to do the middle of the week. And so in that case, I created the structure for the week and I'm slotting in the items.
Okay.
And so it just depends.
And I agree with you about kind of customizing that. I work that way too. When I work with clients and I'm working with them with their designing their profit strategies and things, is that there's this basic system that I use fundamentally, but everybody's goals are different. Everybody's where they're at with their money is different. Priorities are different. So I'm with you that, there is no one size fits all. There's no really cookie cutter thing to it. It really helps to customize it because you're more motivated. You can see the bigger picture, what it's something that you are emotionally attached to.
Right.
So what have you experienced, like with your own clients? What tends to be the tipping point for people to be willing to get out of that comfort zone into something that could be better?
One of my favorite quotes is like, change will happen when the pain of moving is greater than the pain of staying. And so for me, that idea of a tipping point, it is almost always exactly that. And so I just finished reading a book called Margin by Richard Swenson. And he talks about threshold and how we all have a certain threshold. And he uses the example of the straw that broke the camel's back. We've all heard that, and it actually is true. Like after a certain point, it just will take one straw before that camel has reached its threshold on what it can carry, and a straw will literally break a camel's back. And so we all have a certain capacity for what we can do, and one more thing puts us over our threshold. And I find with clients, that's what happens. They've been productive in the past, or they felt like they've had it together in the past, whatever that looks like for them. And then one more thing puts them over. So it could be saying yes to a board position. And now all of a sudden they have this responsibility in new processes and new ideas that they hadn't thought of before. And it kind of pushes them over, like your tipping point or past their threshold. Or sometimes people move from a structured job to owning their own business, where, you know, they have all day, every day to do whatever they want, and they're not really sure how that looks. You know, or it could be that someone just, you know, there was a health scare. And so they've recommitted to fitness, and they have no idea, because they're so busy, crazy busy all the time. How do they get back out there and exercise, or find the time to eat right, or recommitting to their family? You know, one of my favorite stories is my first client from NABO. We're at a NABO lunch, and the premise behind our lunches, for those of you who have not been at a NABO lunch, is it's a round table, but everyone pays for their own meal. And it came to the end of the lunch, and the person sitting across from me, and her and I had been talking about how she needed help, but she wasn't ready to pull the trigger. She reached into her bag and realized she didn't have her wallet and couldn't pay for lunch.
Oh, no.
And she looked at me and she's like, obviously, this is a sign. I need help. And for her, that was her tipping point. For me, it was the best lunch I've ever paid for. But, you know, and all those examples that I gave you, those are all reasons clients have come to me within like the last probably 2 months.
Okay.
So it's that adding one thing on.
I mean, those are, I agree. There's usually at some point, there is usually something, whether you recognize it, or maybe, you know, there's going to be something that's just going to bring it to your attention. That's just going to be like, okay, I need to do something different, or things are just kind of start to implode on itself. If I really want to take it to the next level, I'm going to have to make some changes. So I know one of you're really big on delegating. And I know that's hard for people. It's hard for me, especially when you have been so used to being the one in control, and at least, you know, it may be chaos, but you know that it gets done. It gets done the way you want it to get done, or not. But at least, you know, it's one of those, I know I can own it. And if it doesn't get done, then it's on me, and I don't have to be dependent on somebody else for accomplishing something. But you have a different approach when it comes to delegating, and it's really an asset. You describe it as a paint-by-number system for how to delegate really effectively. Talk to us a little bit about that.
So there's really 3 steps, and it boils down to who are you delegating to, what are you delegating, and then how are you doing it? And there's a couple strategies that I work for with clients. So one of them is we start a resource list, just listing out everyone in their life. And I have a starter, like 50 things to start with that you can think of, you know, like kids and spouses and retired people and your next door neighbor and people you go to networking with and all this stuff. And don't think about what would you give them. Just start thinking about who's out there.
Okay.
Then move over to, okay, now what are some of my tasks? Because the whole idea is to figure out what can you match. Can you match a person from list A to a task that you're going to create over here on list B? And so with this list, you're just listing out everything you have on your plate. And you're listing out everything that you wish you had time to get to and you don't. It's personal and it's business. It's everything. Dump it all out, everything. Then what you're doing is you're pulling back out that idea of zone of genius. and you're circling the items that only you can do. And this is where I caution my clients, please do not have an inflated sense of self. That whole list does not sit in your zone of genius. So let's look at it judiciously. More than likely, there is only, if 25% of that list sits in your zone of genius, you're doing really well. Then you're just looking at, okay, here are the tasks that are not in my zone of genius. Here are people I've identified that could potentially do those tasks. Now let's start matching them up. And then that last place is how you do it. And so I have this list, 9 steps of delegation, that because it's a process, it's a system. Delegating is a skill. And I think once a lot of my clients understand the fact that it's not throwing spaghetti against the wall and hoping it'll stick, but it's actually, if I do step 1 and then step 2 and then step 3, I'm good. It'll work. It may need a couple of tweaks along the way, but it'll work.
Well, I like the way that it's almost like a very structured brain dump in a way, right? Because you're just trying to get stuff out of your head, and you're not, if you start off trying to think of what are all the things that I need to delegate that I can give to somebody else, and your mind's already starting to try and find that correlation, then you get stuck. I'm like, I don't know anybody who can do that. And then you get stuck and you don't do what you don't accomplish that. So I love the way you structure it, where you just start with, okay, just list everything, or list the resources first. Don't worry about who's going to do what. Just list your resources, and then list all the things that maybe that you do, whether it's in your zone of genius or not yet. And then you can start kind of seeing some patterns or things like that. So I like that it's something that's very quick, either simple, quick tasks that you can start then connecting some of those dots.
Right. And, one word of caution here is, the goal isn't to delegate everything off the list that isn't circled on the first try.
Oh, that's what I was going to ask you. Yeah. I was going to say, wow.
No, that's setting yourself up for failure, and that's not our goal. I usually ask my clients to find 3. I'll say, find 3 things that you can delegate. And before we meet again, and typically I work with clients every other week when I'm working one-on-one, I say, commit to find 3, commit to having moved forward on 1. And then once 1 is done, we move to the rest. And it doesn't matter if it's a 15-minute task, or if it's an hour task, or if it's a 12-hour task, just something. Just get the ball moving, because we have 168 hours in the week. You can only work more than 168 hours in the week if someone else is doing some of your work. Like, that's the only way there is.
Sure.
You're limited at 168, and part of that you're sleeping, and the other part you're showering. So there's you don't have a whole 168 to work with as far as work goes. So the way to accomplish more is to actually have someone else doing some of your pieces. And it doesn't matter if you start at 15 minutes. 15 minutes a day over the course of a year is like taking 3 college courses. So there's power in the 15 minutes.
I like that. And I like the way that you break that down, and look, don't try and delegate everything all at once. Start off something small, because part of it is you have to get used to that, right? And then secondly is that, especially for people that are trying to get comfortable with delegating, starting off a little bit small is going to be starting to kind of ease that person in, rather than, as you said, you jump all in and then you're setting yourself up for total and complete failure.
Well, yeah, because you can't keep track of all those moving parts.
Right, exactly.
Then it's taking more time.
Is it important to have, I referenced like the E-Myth before, Michael's really big on systems. Is it important to know and have your systems set up in your business for those kind of tasks, or before you look to delegate it?
I think it depends.
Okay.
And the reason behind that is there's 6 levels of delegation.
Okay.
And so you can delegate at the level of, I want you to do this. and do step 1 and come back and tell me about it, and then go and do step 2 and come back and tell me about it, all the way out to level 6, which is, here's the overall view of the challenge, go solve it, have at it, and I'm going to assume you've got it handled, no need to report back, and everything in between.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the goals, obviously, when you're delegating is figuring out at what level the person needs to, what kind of support they need. And so in the case of someone who needs a lot of support, then yeah, you really need to have everything laid out, your system set, everything exactly what needs to be done for certain people and for certain tasks. On the other flip side of the coin, potentially the person you're delegating to can create the system because, that may sit in their skill set. And you just need to figure out along the way. The one thing that I will say, though, for sure, is you need to know what you want the end result to be.
Okay.
No matter how, it doesn't matter how they get there, but you need to know what you want the takeaway to be on whatever it is you're delegating. That piece, and you also want to make sure that you have some sort of structure in place for how you're tracking what you've sent out and what you're waiting to come back.
Okay, that's a really good tip, especially, and I'll agree with you there, too, is, sometimes I get caught up in, okay, well, I need to know what all the steps are before I can give it away. And really the most important piece is, what do I need it to look like? What is the end result that I need it to be? And, to get started. Again, you can get really caught up in it if you think that everything has to be all your ducks have to be in a row before you can get started. And that's, as you're saying, that's not always the case.
Mm-mm. No, sometimes you can, I had a coach once who kept telling me, Lisa, you can build the plane while you're flying it. I'm thinking, can't. Like, in what world can you do that? But I get what she was saying is, sometimes you can just figure it out as you go.
Yeah, I agree. My coach said the same thing to me too, because I got so caught up in not taking a step because I thought I had to get everything perfect first. And she's like, no, just move forward. We'll figure it out as we go. And it's a little scary to do it that way, but I think that's where bringing in that outside help, having that support, that coach is helpful, because they can kind of guide you, and you're not doing this by yourself. But they're also kind of pushing you a little bit to move outside of your comfort zone. We talked about the kind of that tipping point, that threshold for someone to want to make that change. What generally has been your experience with people who are ready to make that change, but also are seeking somebody like yourself out for that outside help to help them make that change? What generally are the benefits of having a coach like yourself who's a productivity expert to help people move forward and being more efficient than trying to just do it all themselves?
I think one of the greatest advantages of having a coach in your corner, and you can speak to this also, is the fact that they can see what you can't see. You're in it. You're mired in the day-to-day, and a coach is outside. They don't have the same skin in the game that you do. They don't have the same emotional involvement in it that you do. And so they can sit back and say, hey, have you thought about this? So like many times clients will leave a session with me and they'll say, I'm really committing to doing X, Y, or Z. And then they come back and I say, okay, so, what did you do based on what you said you would do? And they give me this, awesome narrative of their week. And I come back to, how does that relate again to what you said you were going to do? And, and all of a sudden they're like, oh man, it doesn't. But in the moment they feel like it does. And so I think that's the greatest advantage you can have with a coach in general, any coach, is they can see what you're too tied in and what you can't see. Now, as far as tangible benefits, working with someone who's an expert in time management and productivity, it will, I want to say 100%. Now you don't want to, and then I'm thinking that's probably not the right phrasing, but I can tell you in my experience, all of my clients, their income has increased. It is a byproduct of the work that we do together because they are more effective and efficient with what they're doing. And therefore that ends up with being more clients. It just does.
Well, and I think one of the things that you touched on that I think is kind of the cornerstone of why you want to bring a client on is that accountability factor. As you said, okay, here's your goals for this week, go do, and then they come back and report to you, and you said, it sounds like you were really busy, but I didn't hear where you actually accomplished what we talked about. And so it keeps you accountable. And I actually just experienced this over the summer. Is I had brought in somebody temporarily to help me kind of get organized. I was planning ahead my content calendar for the coming year, and I was just having difficulty literally just sitting down to do it. Like I just kept I kind of had the squirrel syndrome, right? Like things just pop up in my day and I kept attending to it and I was never getting it done. Well, I brought somebody in to spend a few hours. He only had a few hours to spend with me. And it was amazing because the fact that he was here in the room with me, I knew for sure we only had 3 hours to spend. I knew how busy he was. So this was like a really precious amount of time. So I didn't want to waste his time. And everything else went out of focus. Like I didn't focus on anything else but this. And we took that time and literally I have it all these Post-its on my wall now because I've got the entire calendar completely planned out, when things are getting done, where all, when content, all the different, we did a brainstorm idea of all the different content that we could do, and it all matched up. And I kind of left that session thinking, holy crap, you know how long that would have taken me if I'd done it by myself.
Right.
And right. I mean, it's just because if you're only accountable to yourself, it's really easy to rationale why I can't do this right now. But if somebody else is expecting you to do something, or you have to report back to somebody like you or like me, it makes a huge, huge difference. And I was telling my own coach, I said, I finally get the distinction between being busy and being productive. After doing this for years, it finally just the light bulb went on. Because that was one of the first times I ever did anything so focused, and I felt like I actually did something on my business rather than in it.
Right. And I find too that people are definitely, some are internally motivated, some are externally motivated, and that some can go back and forth between the two. And for those that are more externally motivated, having an appointment with someone else really helps them focus and make sure that they get it done. Right now I have a Propel Your Productivity program and mastermind going. And that's one of the byproducts of that group format, is that people are not just accountable to me, they're accountable to each other, which is amazing. It wasn't something that I had built into the program, but it's definitely something that's happened after we've run it for a couple months. And, it's great to see people come on the call and say, hey, did you do this to someone else? And I was like, oh my gosh, I can just sit back and interject as needed. They're handling it on their own. This is great. So it's that piece of having someone there holding your feet to the fire and holding you accountable to what you say is important.
Yeah, I agree. And I like the context you put that, because clearly I am an external motivator. And I just, by evidence, I have, I've hired I've had a coach I've worked with and for a year and a half. And that was probably one of the best investments I ever made in my business, because it's what motivated me. It was what got me focused and moving forward. And I worked, and I like too, when you talk about, we don't want to necessarily reinvent our behaviors or mold our behaviors around things, because then again, right, there's no emotional connection. There's, everyone's got their own talents and behaviors. Maybe we leverage those to our benefit. And I like that you recognize, okay, some people are internal motivators, some are external. There's no good or bad, just recognize which it is, and then seek out the support to leverage that to get things done. Does that sound accurate?
That is exactly my philosophy when it comes to coaching. You are doing things right now in your life that work. Let's build on those and then figure out, okay, where do you go from there? It's all about awareness. We use an acronym in my coaching, AWE, awareness, work, and evaluation. Awareness. Let's dig into what really is the challenge. And then work, let's figure out how to work through it. And then evaluation, let's figure out what worked and how to redo it the next time it comes up in a better way. And so if you're internally motivated, this entire last like 10 minutes of conversation, you're like, whatever. I don't need someone on the outside. I just need me. Great. That's awesome. And then you want to hold on to that and use that everywhere you can. For the rest of the population, like you and I are, you're like, oh yeah, find me the structure I need so that I am making an appointment with someone else to get stuff done, because that's my best motivation.
Yeah.
It's knowing who you are and what you are and how to build on that to be as productive and effective and efficient as you can be.
Lisa, we have had such an amazing conversation about this, and I know we could go on and on. I know that you can give us a lot more information, and I think we've got people. There's enough here to kind of start thinking about things and getting started. But where can people go to learn more about what you do and seek somebody like you out if they were looking to bring in that external help in their business?
So 2 resources I want to share with your listeners, Jennifer. The first one is, like we're just talking about, awareness. So the first piece is, how productive are you really? Like, are you falling on the busy end or are you falling on the productive end? So I have a 10-question quiz that'll help you figure that out. It helps you identify, where are your strengths? Where are some areas that aren't as strong? And you can put the actual link in your show notes. But for those of you who are listening to this and are typing it in as I say it, it's a bit.ly link. So bit.ly/how-busy-quiz. And so that's one place that you can go. It's a 10-question quiz. So you're talking less than 2 minutes to finish it, get some feedback. The second thing is, I'm happy to have conversations. If you haven't been able to tell from the podcast so far, this is my passion. This is what I love to do. I know I hit it really well. It really does energize me to have conversations with people. So I do offer a 30-minute complimentary Propel Your Productivity breakthrough. And I do these for 2 reasons. One, because I truly do love to do it. And it gives me market research. Like, I want to know what's going on in your life and business that's causing you that uncomfortable, I'm too busy feeling. Mm-hmm. And then the second reason I do it is then through the course of conversation, if you're a good fit for one of my programs, I offer it to you. If you're not a big deal. You still walk away with 2 to 3 concrete strategies that you can use to be more productive. Either way, it's a win-win. And so that scheduling link is schedulewithlisa.com.
Great. And, again, for those of you that weren't able to type all of that in or write it down, all this information will be available in our show notes. And I highly recommend do the quiz. I mean, if you can't find 2 minutes, for goodness sakes.
If you can't find 2 minutes, you need to call me direct.
Yeah, as I say, get on the phone with her. If you can't do the 2-minute quiz. But those are it's not going to give you all the answers, but everyone's looking for a place to start there. There's a place to start. And then get on a call with Lisa to kind of start talking some of that through. And that's really helpful. So again, it'll all be available in our show notes. So go there for all the links that were mentioned. So thank you, Lisa, so much for coming on our show today.
Absolutely my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm afraid that's all the time we have for today, but I want to thank you for joining us. Remember that all the links mentioned in this episode are available in our show notes, as well as all of our episodes at www.crushthejourney.com. You can also find us on iTunes. Today's episode is brought to you by Evolution Live. Don't miss Evolution Live this October, a 3-day event focused on business education and networking. Hosted by business coach Erin Morgan, join other committed, smart, passionate entrepreneurs to learn next-level content and make amazing connections. Get your ticket today at erinmorgan.com/evolution-live. Thanks again for listening to us, and here's to you crushing your journey.